Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast. Today we are talking with Calvin Wayman, who is chock full of personal development goodies for us today.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was an amazing conversation filled with actionable, practical, brilliant ideas and concepts.
I actually had a pretty important epiphany during the interview as well.
That's true, which you can hear if you stick around after the interview on the after show where Ivy and I share our biggest takeaways, and you can hear Ivy's epiphany and my unboundless. It's boundless. It's unbounding.
It's so boundless, it's unboundless.
That's right. It's uncontained. My enthusiasm is really what I was trying to say there for all the awesome things that we learned. So stick around for that, and let's jump into the interview.
Let's do it! Hello, and welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Calvin Wayman. Calvin is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and social media entrepreneur who owns Cobb's Media, a social media management agency designed to help small businesses and entrepreneurs stand out on social media. He's been featured in Entrepreneur magazine and was named one of the top 30 entrepreneurs under 30, and was just featured on the Dave Ramsey Show for becoming debt-free for the first time in his entire adult life. Calvin's new book debuted on the Amazon Top 100 list and is called Fish Out of Water, The Guide to Achieving Breakthrough and Permanently Transforming into the New You. Welcome to the show, Calvin.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled that you asked, and so I appreciate it and happy to be here.
Well, we're glad that you're here, and we would love to learn more about what you're up to and why you love it.
Sure. So the main thing I'm up to is my social media management. And I think the reason I'm excited about it is it was just a natural fit being a millennial. Well, that's actually not entirely true. It wasn't always a natural fit in the sense that when I first got into the social media game, I was actually kind of shy on social media. In fact, for the longest time, I don't know if you've ever seen the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But, awesome. So I was afraid to put a picture of my own self on Facebook for a while. So it was just Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes
That's great.
for the longest time. And then I decided that if I was going to make a difference, I needed to step out. And in fact, you mentioned that my company name Cobb's, where that actually came from is, and I haven't talked about this a ton. I'm glad that you asked it right early on. Cobb's is an alias that I came up with that is Calvin and Hobbes put together, right? And so that was going to be my alias so I could hide behind it. And so the reason I named my company Cobb's Media is I want to remember that origin of where I've come from, of being afraid to put myself out there. A lot of my clients are that way where they haven't been in the spotlight before. I get it. But social media is now something that is just a natural for me. It's something I love playing with, all the new platforms and when they come out, but certainly using the ones that are time tested, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, to see what we can do to grow businesses. And so that's what I'm doing now, just building the agency and helping businesses stand out.
So how did you overcome your shyness around social media?
Getting into sales is probably the short answer. So I knew I wanted to have freedom and I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't know what it was going to be though. And a few years ago, I read my first ever, motivational / personal development book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure you guys might have heard of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, he said, no matter what business you get into, you need to know how to sell. And so I got into sales, and I thought since I was entrepreneurial and wanted freedom that I was going to be a natural. But in all reality, I fell flat on my face. And I was horrible because I was so shy. But to make a long story short, after almost getting fired because I was costing the company money every single time I answered the phone, a mentor of mine who was the owner of that company basically took me under his wing. His name's Marion Timpson, and said, I'm going to make you my little experiment. Yes, you're horrible. Yes, you hold the record right now for the worst performance an agent ever had. But but you're moldable. So if you promise me to do everything I tell you to do, then I'll keep you and I won't fire you. And I promised and did everything he told me to do. And so I think just talking to people day after day, call after call, and then just forcing myself to interact with people daily and throughout the day is what I think started to chip away the shyness and make me say, you know what, I'm going to step out. I'm going to put my profile picture up on Facebook.
What were some of the things you learned during that mentoring period? It sounds like a very transformative experience.
Yeah, we could have an entire show or 2 shows on it, but several things, some of the biggest takeaways were not taking things so personally on your results. And I think this is super important, especially since we're early in the year right now, because a lot of people have set New Year's resolutions. Unfortunately, many of them have failed. And this is also huge for millennials because you're told that you can do anything and you can, but sometimes the result doesn't happen as quickly as you would have hoped or liked. And what my mentor taught me is to be successful, and I actually talk about this in my book, Fish Out of Water, but to be successful, the most successful people don't focus on what's outside of their control. They focus and control what's in their control. So what that means is, in a sales perspective, you don't have control, direct control over somebody saying yes. You can't control if somebody buys. Right? You can't try to control that or put your attention and so much focus on that. But what can you control? You can focus and control how you present. You can control the things in your control, right? And if you do focus there and you win there, then the other stuff on the outside just happen as a byproduct. So that I think was one of the biggest key lessons that I learned. And then some simple other things like people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like show people that you care if you want to influence them and actually care. Like that's the biggest hack to being a good salesperson. Yeah, just actually care about the person. And yeah, you will just stand out like crazy past anyone else.
Well, and that ties in with your point, too, about not trying to control the result, because I think all of us can relate to a salesperson who was clearly just trying to push the sale on us. And we could see that they were trying to control us, and we have a natural instinct to resist against that, even if we want the thing they're selling. So
totally. I tell people that if you're trying to sell to a millennial, you're screwed. Millennials hate that. They're BS meters. It needs to be about them, why they want it, and let them like be involved and see how it's going to make a difference or an impact and actually care. Because if you're trying to sell, you're not going to have a lot of success.
Well, and it makes the selling experience so much better as a seller, I think, because then you're just really, it becomes a conversation about value and about improving their life rather than all of this weird pressure of it being about the sale itself. Yeah.
100%. Totally with you.
Calvin, what's the biggest dream you've achieved so far, and in what ways did you have to grow to achieve it?
Over the last year, I've had a few major ones, actually. Really, really big ones. So one that you mentioned in the intro that I wanted for many years was being completely free from debt. When I turned 18, I'm 29 now, and when I turned 18, I did what I think America's taught to do is the quote-unquote right thing to do. I got a credit card. And then I went to college and I got a lot of student loan debt. And then I bought a car that was a little bit more expensive than I needed. And before I knew it, I was in a lot of debt. And I hated the feeling of debt. I hated seeing the money going out every month. And I was like, holy cow, if I didn't have to pay off this debt, look how much more I could do. So as of the last year, that was one of the major ones is on the first day of spring in 2016. Spring's all for new beginnings, and it was for me in more ways than one. So that's when I became debt-free for the first time in my entire adult life.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I was super awesome getting to chat with Dave Ramsey in front of 12 million people to do the debt-free shout there. And then another big one was going 100% in my own businesses. You know, as an entrepreneur and wanting to make an impact, I wanted to transition. I had quit my day job and was doing door-to-door, so I had total freedom there. I didn't have a boss, but it still wasn't my own thing. And last year is when I decided, you know what, I'm cutting off any income that's not my own business and just putting all the focus on Cobb's Media, my speaking, and my book sales, which makes me go to the third one. Something I always want to do is write a book. And I had the mentality that it was inevitable. It was going to always happen, but it was going to happen someday, maybe 10 years, 15 years. But then I ran into another millennial who has a six-figure business, who has spoken with my idols like Gary Vaynerchuk and Grant Cardone. And he had written a book 2 years previously. And the punchline is he was 14.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Caleb Maddox, he's 15 now. I was actually just hanging out with him over this last weekend in San Diego. But when I met Caleb Maddox and saw that a 12-year-old wrote a book, then I was like, you know what? No more excuses. I couldn't justify it in my own mind of waiting until I was better, older, smarter, or anything like that. So that was the third one I'd say, is writing a book. It's something I always wanted to do, and I'm super pumped that I was able to hit that just this past year.
Well, congratulations on reaching all of those goals. And if you had to pick 2 ways, like the top 2 ways that you had to grow in order to get to those 3, what would they be?
Oh, man. So one of the things that I did that I think helped me hit those is I ended up getting a mentor and a business coach. And one of the things that I had to learn and grow into, and it's not going to sound like work, but it was, and that is I had to realize that I was worthy of it, or that I was already good enough. Because it's huge, right? Because so many times we're perfectionists, or we look to others and put them on pedestals, right? And just working through him, every time I was wondering, like, could I do this? He was like, no, dude, you totally can. You already have the pieces. Heck yes, you can write the book. Heck yes, you can go full-time in your own business. Look what you've done. You're door knocking, for heck's sakes. He kept going to stuff I've already done. If you can do door knocking, you can do any of this stuff. This is easy. So that was a big growth, is recognizing that I was already good enough. And then another thing that helped me, that was also something I actually learned door to door, was there was a time when I did door to door, and I don't know how deep we want to go into the story, maybe later, but there was something that I call my darkest day. And it's where I went day after day after day getting nothing. And sales is 100% commission, doing the door to door. So I had nothing coming in. And when I was at the end of my rope, I ended up getting a guy named Frank who bought and then canceled at the end. And it was dark and I had to leave, and I was still at nothing, and I freaked out in my car and was almost crying, and something said, go back to Frank's house. And I was like, why the heck would I do that? And I go back to Frank's house and said, why don't you just do this? And he did. He bought it. And not only did he buy it, but he gave wisdom. It was almost as like he was sitting in the back of my car hearing me freak out. Because in the car I was like, God, the universe, what does this mean? Give me a message. Give me something. And when I went back to his house, he said, you know what, Calvin? I am going to do it. And I'll tell you why. It has nothing to do with solar anymore. That's what I was selling. It has nothing to do with solar. I'm going to do it, and it's because of you. Because I'm an older guy, and I've been around a time or two, and I know that the people that succeed in life are the ones that don't quit and never give up. And because you didn't quit, because you came back several hours later, I'm going to give you the order. And he did. And as I was taking down his information, still like I was just blown away what was going on, he came up and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, Calvin, I know you're working your ass off, but don't quit. Keep going. Never give up. And so that was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs and things I had to grow into. Is I was always worrying if I was on the right path, or wondering if I should be changing course or working harder. It taught me patience in an interesting way. And what the growth it made me do is it developed this resolve that when I lock my mind on something, I'm going to freaking go get it, and I'm not going to stop. If it's going to take long, fine, I'm not going to stop. If something gets in my way, fine, I'm going to find a way around it or go through it. I'm not going to stop. And that is what I think helped me accomplish the big major goals that I grew into just this past year.
Well, I have goosebumps from that incredible story, and
I get them too. You're not the only one.
I mean, what a great point in your life to be able to revisit and connect to. And I'm so grateful that you shared this story on another level, because I have this, those like colored rubbery bracelets that people wear.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I literally have one that I've been wearing since, I don't know, I think it was like May or June, that says "Never Give Up" on it.
Oh,
and it's
you're
like,
kidding me?
It's pink. It says "Never Give Up." Now I'm going to have an additional anchor because of your
Heck
awesome
yeah.
story of
That's
like why
awesome.
this is like, so that's really great.
I love it. That's perfect.
And would you say that dark day was the most significant challenge you faced so far, or is there something else along your journey that you would consider the most significant challenge that you faced? And we'd love to hear how you overcame it.
That was you as an entrepreneur. You're always hitting into challenges that you wonder, how in the heck am I going to surpass this? Over the last year or two, that was definitely the biggest, because I was about to throw the towel in. I was about to say, I can't do this. If this is what entrepreneurship is, I want to quit. That was the thing that if I was leaving the neighborhood after he said no, and I was like, I can't do this. If I would have left, then I would have been on a completely different path, I think, than I am now. But it was going back, continuing knocking the entire day, and then several hours later when it's dark, then going back to his house that changed it. So I think that'd be the darkest. Now, there's been others, though, and some of them are probably self-inflicted. Like, one of the goals or the big challenges I wanted to do last year is I wanted to really push myself and see what I could do. And so I signed up for a half marathon in March, and then signed up for an ultra marathon in September.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I went from running a half marathon to running 2 marathons in a row in the mountains in Park City, Utah, to see if I could. And leading up to that was one of the most excruciating things ever mentally, especially a week or two before, because a week before, I now got to see what the weather was going to be like. And when I first signed up for it, I thought August would be too hot, October's getting too cold, September should be perfect in Utah. Well, this September, where it was snowing.
Oh,
So
no.
that was the added little pressure to it. So the night before, just laying up in bed, going to bed at like 8 o'clock because I had to get up at 3 a.m. to get ready for the race, and realizing it was already snowing outside that cabin I was in and how cold it was, and not knowing if I could actually do it, was an excruciating night. And then the next day going through it was a little bit excruciating, but just taking that next step and saying, you know what, I don't know if I can run 50, but I know I can run 10 feet, so that's what I'm going to do. I know I can run another 10 feet, so that's what I did. I know I could probably run another half mile, so I did that, and then it just kept stacking, and then after a while, 50 miles came about 15 hours later. So,
Oh my gosh.
so that is another one I would say that had a challenge. Again, that was probably more self-inflicted because it was the goal that I didn't have to do, but I put myself in that position to do. But I really love the experience to go through it, because I think it can have a ripple effect in other areas of my life.
Did that give you a stronger sense of confidence or resolve
yes.
in other parts of your life?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It just showed me that it doesn't matter how big something is, you can go after it. And if it feels too big, then break it down, right? Whatever that big project is or that big thing is, break it down. If you want to write a book and you want it to be 40,000 words, awesome. But schedule your first 10 minutes, and just write for 10 minutes. Do that one little thing. Like, yeah, it's done that in my business. It's done that with my health. It's just been a few months since it's happened, but yeah, it's changed the way that I approach my life for sure.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking that this is such a great metaphor for taking those steps toward a big goal, or because if you focus on the huge thing that you're going to accomplish,
right?
It becomes intimidating. And to say,
Yes.
there's that self-compassion that you had too, because you're like, okay, I know I can make it 10 feet. And if that's as far as I make it, like that's what but then you hit that 10 feet and you're like, oh, I can keep going. Yes. And I think that's incredible. And also, I just really want to understand this visual of you running in the snow. Like,
I was bundled.
Was there like gear? Like, did you have like a down jacket on or something too?
So I had a waterproof jacket, gloves, a hat, and then a waterproof poncho over everything.
That is amazing. That just adds a different element to it. I love it.
It was,
Congratulations.
It was definitely something to, like, it couldn't have been made better to just intimidate you, because it was actually worse the day before than actually running in it. Because when you're running in it, I was actually not nearly as cold as I thought I was going to be. I ended up sweating like crazy, and when I stopped, I would freeze my face off. But as long as I kept going, then I was good.
Oh, that's awesome.
That reminds me of a great quote I love, which is when people are talking about writing a book or any kind of writing, it's not the writing that's hard, it's the starting to write that's hard.
Oh, yeah.
And what's your process been like writing this new book that you just published?
So this is huge. I hope people can take this if anybody's thinking of writing a book. First of all, what you said is so right. There were days where I would say, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to turn off my cell phone and I'm going to write. And writing was a very interesting process because it causes you to face yourself in a way you never have before. And there were days where I thought I was going to write for 8 hours, and I kept distracting myself, and any little thing I could do would distract myself. My house never looked cleaner. Every little thing. And so I would then, at the end of the very day, finally force myself and write for 30 minutes and waste the whole day. It was crazy. So one of the things that really pushed things along, because there's so many obstacles you hit into, you wonder if what you're writing is even original enough that anybody's going to want to read it. You wonder, how am I going to structure this sentence? What chapter is going where? What are the concepts? And you're trying to go through your mind of what it is you're actually trying to say, and how do you make sure you're not repeating yourself at some other point in the book. And there was one single day that changed everything to where it organized it enough that really pushed everything going forward. And by the way, as excruciating as this all felt, and it felt like it was taking forever to write, my book took a month and a half from the beginning, from writing to publish. And this is one of the things that helped. One day, it's very technologically advanced, by the way. I bought Postit notes. And what I did with these Postit notes is I just sat down, and every little idea that was like a core concept of something that was tied to the book, I wrote it on the Postit note and stuck it to the wall. And I just kept writing with a pen. Postit note, stuck it to the wall. Postit note, stuck it to the wall. Before I knew it, I had an entire wall filled in Postit notes. And then I stood up and I looked at all the Postit notes and then just saw if any of the words or phrases would trigger another part of my book or a core concept. It didn't matter the order. I just puked it out of me. Got any idea, I just got it out. Postit note, stuck it to the wall. And then once it was there, and after I saw if it triggered any other ideas, then I was like, here it is. Like, my book's right here on the wall. It's messy, it's disorganized, but now it's out of me. And so what I did from there is, since it was Postit notes, I was like, okay, these ideas look similar. I'm going to move these and put them here. I'm going to move these and put them here. And then I just started moving them around and bunching them up, and it changed everything. It made the chapters of my book. And it was such a cool exercise. I thought I had 7 main concepts, and by doing this exercise, I realized that I really only had 3 main concepts, and the other concepts were just derivatives of the core idea. And so that's why my book, Fish Out of Water, has 3 sections. They were the 3 main core ideas that came from those Postit notes. And this is what made me get writing way faster, because now when I was sitting down to write the starting part, the hard part, I didn't have to just sit there looking at a blank screen for 30 to 40 minutes or hours and get distracted. I now could look at one Postit note, one core idea, and I know what that is. Done is better than perfect. That was one of my core ideas. Awesome. Talk about where that shows up in my life. Or just decide, or make a decision, then make it right. Then I could just start writing about that. Or story of Steve Harvey's YouTube video, Jump, or Lewis Howes quitting his job, And I just took those core ideas, and then it gave me the framework to just write. So the Postit note idea, I think, was huge in getting the momentum moving forward with my book writing process.
And what a helpful reminder that the best system is the system that works for you. Because there's so much pressure to have the most efficient way to do everything, or the most technologically advanced. And you said, Post-it notes on a wall in no particular order, and that's what worked.
Yep.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Just get it out of you. That's it. However that works for you. If it's recording it in a voice recorder to get it out of you, and then you edit it later, yeah, just get it out.
So which of your accomplishments surprised you most? Like either in that moment or when you were looking back at it, you were like, holy mackerel, how did I do that? This is amazing.
I know one specifically because I don't feel like I did much to deserve it, and I don't know how I did it, but it was actually just right after my 50 miles. I had a random guy message me on Facebook and say that he wanted me to get involved with this organization. Now, I don't know if you've ever had anybody ask you to get involved, but I thought he meant he wanted me to join like some network marketing company, wanted me to donate money, and I was like, sell me. Like, why would I want to get involved? And he was like, well, first of all, you'll get paid and it'll be in front of 2,000 people. I was like, what are you talking about? So he was telling me that I should come speak at this event. And at the time, I hadn't spoken at any major event quite yet. And he got me connected with the event coordinator. And I don't know what it is that I said when I talked to her, but they ended up paying me to come speak at the event. But this is where it gets crazy. Just a week or two before the event, they're going to be announcing who their keynote speaker is. And so I'm like, cool, I want to see who I'm speaking next to. Who am I going to meet? Who's going to be the keynote for this 3-day event? And I go to their Twitter, and it says, announcing our celebrity keynote speaker, Calvin Wayman. I'm like, what? So somehow, in some way, I don't know what they read about me, whatever, but they decided to put me as the keynote. So they paid me to come out, gave me a speaking fee, put me in a hotel room, paid for my flight, and put me as the keynote for this entire 3-day event. So that was one of the biggest accomplishments that I was like, holy crap, I don't know how I did that or how the heck that happened, but it happened, and I'm just pumped for it. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I love that story so much. It shows the power of saying yes. And
yes.
You know, even though you had no idea that was going to happen, but you were like, yeah, sure, okay, let's do this, you know. I love that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
In addition to all the awesome wisdom you've shared so far, what advice would you give to other millennials who are on a journey toward fulfillment and success?
Man, that's such a good question. So they're on the journey of fulfillment and success. First of all, they need to realize that they're enough, just like my mentor taught me. And there's a lot of cool advice that's out there. There's books that you can read and information you can glean from other people that have gone before you. But if you're looking to really make an impact, I believe with Steve Harvey, he has this cool video called Jump on YouTube, and he says that everybody was born with a gift. And I truly, truly believe that. And there's been so many successful people that I look up to that say the same thing, that you have a gift. And so the job is to find it, and that's also the trick, is to find it. So how do you get to that? Like if you want to have that life of fulfillment and making a difference, well, you got to do something that doesn't come natural to millennials, I don't think, and that is to pause and get still. One of the things that I do that I picked up since I quit my day job is meditation. I meditate almost every single day, and that's just a way to quiet things down and to get still. At the beginning of this year, I experimented with, I did a 6-day digital detox, I guess you could call it, where I was not on social media. I turned off my cell phone and everything for 6 days and was just with me, with myself. And I think that is one of the most powerful things someone can do for themselves, is just to quiet things down, get still, and find out what it is that you're meant to be doing in this world. And if somebody like me, again, my business is social media. Like, it's what I do, and I still turn it off for 6 days. So if you're looking for the impact that you can make, know that you already have it. You're enough. Get still. It's good to listen to other people, but for a second or however long it takes, get still enough that you can listen to yourself and let it come through.
I think what's really powerful also about getting still is, to your point about self-worth, that if we are looking to others or external circumstances, anything outside of ourselves, to prove to us that we're worthy, It's just going to be filling, at least in my experience, because that's been something that I'd been deliberately working on over the past couple of years, is that it's just going to be filling this empty void, and it's only going to help you feel better for a little bit, really finding maybe some of the blocks or the wounds or other things that might be contributing to that sense of unworthiness, but then also practicing really believing it for yourself. And it does take practice and time, at least in my experience. It didn't happen overnight. Like you said, it seems like it should be simple, but it's very, it's a journey for sure.
Yeah, the millennials that do this, that will get quiet enough through meditation or getting still and listening to yourself, will just have a massive, massive advantage in the world when they're pursuing a business career or just whatever movement you're going after. You'll just have a massive, massive advantage over those that are just busy, just going with the flow.
Will you share a book or a quote that changed your life?
Fish out of water, I hear, is a pretty but that's one of them. A book that has changed my life more recently, I'd say The One Thing by Gary Keller, because it's a book about simplifying things. Sometimes we have so many things that we're trying to juggle at one time, and this book just shows you the power of focus and finding that one thing and going after it. Now, a quote that kind of was a flash. I don't know if I picked it up somewhere, but I've been using it since my 6-day digital detox, and that is, what's the next domino? So as we're sometimes feeling overwhelmed over the big project, whenever you feel overwhelmed, I just come back to that question. What's the next domino? Meaning, what's that small little thing that is so doable, take very little energy, I can just push it over, and it's going to get things moving forward.
That's a great reminder.
I know. You said that, and I started imagining putting pictures of dominoes around my workspace or something. I think I need a reminder about that actually, because it's so good.
Sometimes, we get overwhelmed, and sometimes there's just one little thing. It's like the reason getting started is the hardest part with writing. It's not the whole thing, but sometimes when you get started, then it will lead to something bigger. If you're doing an in-house workout program, it's not finishing the whole workout program that's the hard part. It's just get down. What's the little domino? Push play. If you push play, chances are you're gonna stay there and you'll move your body a little bit, right? So keep it simple. What's the next domino? That will help you create some momentum and productivity.
That's a great reminder. Calvin, thank you so much for being with us today. And could you share with our audience how they can find out more about you and your work?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have a gift for your audience.
Oh, thank you.
But before I give that, so you can find me, Calvin Wayman, pretty much anywhere. Just Google Calvin Wayman or calvinwayman.com. If you're on the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, just search Calvin Wayman. But since my business is social media, and I know social media is a big part of what we're doing in the world to make a difference, I'm giving away something called a free social media makeover. Okay. Now, this is something that is hands-on and very, very valuable. We used to sell this for $300. It's an actual phone call with myself personally or somebody on my team. And we will give you some social media tips to stand out so you can, because if you have a message to share or an impact to make, you can't make it if people don't know about you. So that's what this is all about. You can get set up for that by going to socialmediamakeover.org. So again, just go to socialmediamakeover.org, get set up for that totally free, and we'll help you make over your social media.
Well, thank you. That's a very generous gift.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can click on it there as well. Calvin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. This is so inspirational, and I feel like I'm going to go out after this and knock down the next domino.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, have fun, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Coaching Services. We help you find clarity and confidence so you can take action toward living your dream life. To learn more about one-on-one personalized support from someone who believes you have a path to fulfillment and wants to help you uncover it, visit motivationalmillennial.com/coaching. Hello and welcome to the after show of our conversation with Calvin Wayman. I am so pumped right now, Ivy.
I can see that.
Ivy was like, I want to eat some cookies before the after show. I was like, no, we have to record right now. I'm so amped.
There's also coffee involved. Like there was a dunking thing I'd been imagining happening.
We will let you get to your cookies and coffee in a moment.
No, this is even more exciting than cookies and coffee, so I'm excited.
That's true. Calvin is... Just delete that, please. No, we'll leave it in. It's fine.
Okay, so what is it? What is it that you're so excited to share?
Okay, I am so excited to talk about the Domino. What's the next Domino? Because it has changed my life in the last 2 weeks working on this motivational hip-hop album, Remix Your Reality. I've been trying to finish it. It's been in the work for 6 years. It's really been hardcore in the work for the past 2 years. And every time I thought about it, it just caused me existential anxiety. And recently, starting as the hardest part, I have identified what is the single action that I can take that will trigger the entire chain reaction of getting the album done. And it is walking into the studio and pressing the on button on the computer. So now every time I think about working on this album, I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have to mix this and mix this. Don't think about that, dude. Think about the next Domino. And I walk into the studio and I press the on button on the computer and then the rest takes care of itself. I mean, I can sit there and work for 6 hours when previously I really relate to what Calvin was saying about those days when he would be sitting there and trying to write, and the end of the day, finally, he get 30 minutes done, and I empathize so much with that sense of frustration that, like, oh my gosh, I had the entire day, and all I needed to do was work on this album, and I got the opportunity. Like, I didn't have to go be doing something else. I could just work on it, and what did I do? Like you said, I cleaned the apartment.
Yeah, protective procrastination.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I was just like cheering when he was talking about his Postit notes. I was like, yes, we have to break our own molds, break our own constraints about what we think is the right way to do things. I'm waving my hands ecstatically.
I know, there's so much energy coming from you right now. That's exciting. So what's the next domino you need to turn over? Are you going to turn over?
It's just identifying the triggers, the easy things that I need to do to start doing stuff. Like, for example, I'm reaching out to some schools right now about doing motivational assemblies. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's this whole thing. I need to draft the email and then look up all the contact information and then schedule it all. I said, no. There is a much chiller way to do this. You don't have to contact a bunch of schools. You just have to open a spreadsheet. You can do that. Open the spreadsheet. Sure enough, I open the spreadsheet. I see, oh, here's the first person on the list. Great. And I look up their school and I, type up the email. And then, oh, look, I just created a template for myself. That's fantastic. But I'm really trying to hack the easiest trigger possible.
Well, I'm really appreciating your exuberance. I was imagining getting a domino tattoo. I always think of that. Like, I only have one tattoo, but every time I find something meaningful comes, I'm like, I'm going to get a tattoo of that. And then it ultimately ends up passing. But
well, I'm glad you give it a little time to percolate before you go out and...
Well, it took me 8 years of imagining this tattoo before I got it, so... But no, I mean, the point of that is that I think it's just such a simple reminder, and I think it's like the domino to the domino.
Yeah. It's the flick. It's what's the flick of the first domino that starts the whole chain reaction down. So if you can find out where your flick is, that's not going to be a thing we can turn into anything. I was just thinking, where's your flick? That's a terrible slogan. So what did you enjoy from the conversation with Calvin?
Well, it's interesting because I'm in a little bit of a different space energetically than you, because I had a bit of a realization. And it's interesting because sometimes we record the after show a day or two later and we're recording it immediately following right now. So it feels very fresh. Like, this realization happened. I haven't shared it with anyone, obviously. Like, I haven't processed it at all. But when he was talking about self-worth, As I mentioned, this is something that I've been consciously working on, beginning with the concept of self-love a couple of years ago, and then it's definitely taken on the self-worth aspect. But I think one of the pieces of that, and I think this is interestingly something that I mentioned in the very first episode 0, and it's about feeling like you deserve to be happy, and feeling like happiness and joy is okay. And I think, I might tear up because I'm honestly processing this like right now, because when I was working with my coach, I decided that I wanted 2017 to be about cultivating joy, because I felt like I'd worked so hard to build this foundation of recovering from challenges and all of these things, and this foundation of self-worth. And then I got this thing thrown into my path that I'd never experienced before. And, it was my grandfather passed away 2 days after Christmas. And I had never experienced that kind of loss. It was like losing a parent, because he and my grandmother and my mom all raised me. And so it threw me off, and it got me in a weird grief mental state. And, you just got to roll with it. And anytime you're having emotion, but especially in grief, because what even is it, And I still think I'm processing that, of course, just a few weeks later. And I think I just realized as he was talking that there's a part of me lately that's just been really, stressed and worried and not very present at all, and just worrying about, the ultimate marathon, or what are they called? Like, how am I going to get there? How is this going to happen in the snow? I'm focusing on that rather than here. And I realized that I think that I just have re-triggered this attachment to subconsciously to not feeling safe being happy, and to not feeling safe being joyful, because I'm like afraid of additional loss, because I'm in that loss period right now. So that epiphany was incredibly invaluable, and I don't know that it's going to fix how I'm feeling, obviously, immediately. That's not the expectation, but it just feels like, okay, the reality is that I'm kind of doing this to myself right now. Like, I have so much awesome stuff happening right now that I'm creating. I get to coach and be with amazing people on their journeys, and I get to have amazing conversations, and I live in Berkeley, and all of these things that could be bringing out that cultivating joy. And there's something there about just that's still on my path, I think, of finding that self-worth, is that it's very much connected to being okay with being happy and feeling like joy is something that is safe and awesome and beautiful, and just allowing that joy to be there. So anyway, that was quite a vulnerable thank you for listening, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing it. And I think there's something really important too that comes with cultivating joy and working on letting yourself feel that happiness, because momentum is powerful, right? And I think it's really hard if every time you start to feel like, I'm happy, I'm successful, and clamp.
It's like, oh no,
look, we're making progress, and clamp. It's hard to get that sense of momentum and that rolling, because it's like a dampener that's like keeps tapping down all the time. And that's been really present for me this past week, because I've been having some amazing conversations with people who are radically positive and changing their lives. And it's made me realize the more I'm around that energy makes me want to cultivate more of that. And the more I'm cultivating that, like the more it's present in my life. And it is this cycle. But it's so hard, especially when something major and external happens, like you're saying, like the death of someone you really love, or really disappointing challenge comes up, and it feels like a monkey wrench is thrown in everything. Because I know leading up to the holidays, you were feeling like, yo, I'm gonna go get it.
It really was. I was like on fire. It's so true.
Yeah, and it's hard when something just sort of slams into you like that. So I really applaud you for the way you've been trying to just let yourself feel and work through the grief, and also keeping the eye on, like you said, like, oh, right, but I do want to keep cultivating joy.
Yeah, and one thing to say is that I'm really grateful for this interview with Calvin and this process with you. And the audience for listening and providing this space, because that space somehow opened up that epiphany for me to realize, like, oh my gosh, it's actually okay for me to be happy. Like, I really don't need to fight it so much. And that's part of the reason I was so excited about coffee and cookies, because I was like, I'm going to really just let myself enjoy. I mean, and that's the little things, is that in the moment, your experience of things, and for me, sometimes I just think it's a habit to be pensive and worried, like just for no reason. So just allowing yourself, and I know that for me, I'm going to be working on allowing myself to be like, actually, wow, this is freaking amazing. These cookies are amazing. This view is amazing, just everything, and allowing that to happen. And so I feel really grateful. I feel also kind of raw and a little bit emotional, but in a good way, that's part of life, right?
That's a good reminder. As they say in the Lego movie, everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the team. It's true. Awesome. Well, we will let you get to your coffee and cookies. And thank you so much to Calvin for taking the time to talk with us. And to you, our amazing listeners, we can't wait to be back with you next week. And we hope you step into your power, let yourself be happy, and flick that first domino.
Woohoo! We have a gift for you. If you go online to motivationalmillennial.com/free gift, you can receive a personal transformation guide called Motivating Your Millennial Mind. It includes an outline of some of the limiting mindsets that we commonly have as millennials, as well as 8 motivational tools to help you overcome those mindsets. So again, check that out at motivationalmillennial.com/free gift. That's millennial, IMILLENNIAL.
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis.
Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!